14 Ethno-development. Contents: 14.1 Introduction, 14.2 New concerns in development theories, 14.3 Emergence of alternative approaches, 14.4 Methodology of Ethno-development, 14.5 Conclusion, 14.6 Further reading. Learning objectives. The central objectives of this unit is to explain reorientation of developmental perspective, cultural consideration in development, endogenous development approach, and strategies of ethno-development. 14.1 Introduction. This unit deals with the approach of ethno-development as one of the approaches to sustainable development. Before going to detail of ethno-development, it is necessary to discuss the growth of approaches of development over the times. This will help us to understand how and why there has been growing demand over these times to develop appropriate development theories covering all sections of human societies. From time to time, various scholars have pointed out the importance of understanding diversities of cultural and specific needs of the communities for their own development. This growing concern about social and cultural dimensions of development has brought changes in the developmental thinking, and as a result, approaches of sustainable development and ethno-development have emerged as the critics of the earlier developmental theories. In view of these issues, the unit will explain the various perspectives of development, cultural consideration in development, and strategies of ethno-development. 14.2 New concerns in development theories. The study of the development theories reveals that the meaning and the concept revealed to the theories vary over times. In the beginning, the core meaning of development was to achieve the status of advanced industrial countries of the West, mainly referred to remedies of shortcomings and maladies of progress. The development thinkers of the 12th century have rejected the development thinking of the previous century due to the latter's failure to explain the development pattern of then society. Their reactions to the 19th century failure are related to the process of industrialization of non-Western countries, where this transformation uprooted a large section of people and made them workless. It was also alleged that this development approach has even dislocated social relations among the members of these societies. From economic growth to human development. The growth of colonies' economics of development has generated dependencies of colonial countries on their rulers. The colonial rulers are mainly the European countries. It has been experienced that such dependencies have not created any environment of proper industrialization in the colonial countries. Although some development have been taken place in the interest of colonial rulers, in the name of development of European or colonial countries have destroyed native manufactures, as found in case of textile manufacturing in India, and sabotage efforts at industrialization in Egypt, Turkey, and Persia. Gradually, economic growth theory emerged as a development thinking. Mechanization and industrialization have become part of concept of economic growth. To widen the scope of development, the dimension of political modernization has been incorporated. Further, the new way of the thinking has included the wider dimension. In the mid-1980s, Amartya Sen's contribution to the concept of human development has been important to bringing a different direction in the development approach. Structural reforms of society is the basis of neoliberalism of developmental thinking. This structural reform of society came about through liberalization and privatization of economy. All classical and modern development theories are fundamentally structuralist. In the later phases of progress of development theories, these structuralist emphases have started to change with the influence of phenomenology. The theoretical orientation has been brought a shift in development approach in structuralist and institutional ones. It can also be interpreted as the change from deterministic to interpretative views and from materialistic to multidimensional and holistic views. Such a change can also be interpreted as shift from structuralism to constructivism. The sources of constructivism is found in phenomenology and ethno-methodology. Box 14.1 Phenomenology and Ethno-methodology. Literally, phenomenology is the study of phenomena, appearance of things or things as they appear in our experience or the way we experience things. Phenomenology studies various experience and experience from the subjective or the first person point of view. Phenomenology is a 20th century philosophical way of thinking about the nature of reality, which has influenced sociology. The German philosopher Edward Husserl is closely linked with phenomenology. Phenomenology argues that the only phenomena that we can be sure of is that we are conscious thinking being. Therefore, we should study any phenomena around us in terms of the way we consciously experience them. This examination should be free of preconceptions of casual ideas. These ideas influenced sociologists such as Alfred Schutz, who thought that sociology should look at the way individuals construct the social world. Phenomenology is used in two basic ways in sociology: to theorize about substantial sociological problems, to enhance the adequacy of sociological research methods. There are two expressions of this approach, which are constructivism and ethno-methodology. Ethno-methodology integrates the Pearsonian concern for social order in phenomenology and examines the means by which actions make ordinary life possible. Ethno-methodology as a sociological perspective was founded by American sociologist Harold Garfinkel in early 1960s. The main idea behind it are set out his books studies in ethno-methodology. It differs from their sociological perspective in the way that which all perspectives presuppose that social world is orderly. Ethno-methodology start out with the assumption that the social order is illusory. From them, social order is constructed in the minds of social actors. As society confront the individual as a series of sense impressions and experience which she or he must somehow organize into a coherent pattern. However, along with the changes in the broader perspective in the development studies, there can be seen another trend of such changes in the approaches. The developmental approach gradually started to be more specialized and specific. It has become more logical and regional in orientation. The early and the modern thinkers of development has been fundamentally associated with the theoretical orientation of structuralism, but the later development thinking was rejected this view. This approach exhibits more diversities in theoretical orientation. The earlier groups are concerned with the generalized theoretical orientations having worldwide applications for development, but the present development thinking does not believe in general application of generalized theories. Now the development approaches are not relevant across the wider regions. These development approaches are related not only to the growth but to what kind of growth, not simply to development but what kind of development. This has helped in emergence of approaches in diverse new directions which have come to be known as sustainable development, people-friendly growth, pro-poor growth, etc. Now the development approach is related to groups, actor-oriented approach and participatory approach. B. Sustainable development. Sustainable development need development approach from within the community. Earlier it was felt that technological and capital transfer from other countries would bring development. This has been gradually found ineffective in continuity of development process of society. Groups of scholars believe that to make the development sustainable, there should be participatory and community-based program. The development approach should be identified by the local people themselves on the basis of their own needs. The designing and the implementation of the project principles and techniques suited to the local people are developed with the help of local people from whom the development planning is being designed. Since it is the development for the people, the development process essentially depends upon people's participation. Development cannot be successfully imposed on a society from outside. The sustainable development puts stress on the participatory aspect of the local people on decision-making process that affects their lives. The people for whom development program has been adopted must take part in planning and execution of every aspect of the program. It believes that the development program which does not involve the local people often fails. Therefore, community participation or people's participation is essential. C. Cultural consideration in development. During the colonial period, colonized societies tend to modernize themselves for their own development. They have tried to adopt the attributes of modern societies, that is, their colonial rulers. Therefore, modernization and development mean westernization of colonized societies and culture. The process have established strong trend in social transformation, but this approach and belief have started to decline along with the development of colony-free national culture. Culture has gradually become a part of the development studies. Along with the World Commission on Culture and Development in 1996, there has been increase of importance of cultural dimensions and development. Now, culture is not considered as an obstacle to development process, rather than an influential factor for development of a society. In due course of time, the development studies have been oriented more to cultural dimensions on the basis of cultural diversities. Earlier, most of the development studies nation has considered as the unit of development, but gradually this nation has undergone considerable changes. Now the nation is not always considered as unit of development. It is the community or small section of a nation considered as the unit of development. The community development, local economic development, and micro-regional development are gaining importance in the development studies. Local development in the various forms like urban development and rural development, regional inequality, regionalism, ethnic development, ethno-development are the common orientations of the development studies. However, there has been a trend of development beyond the nation at the macro-regional level with international cooperation and global macroeconomic policies. The regional has become a familiar unit of development. There is yet another development approach at the world level and global macro policies of the international institutions and UN system. Consideration of culture in development is now new. Culture is found to be implied in many earlier approaches. The culture and development studies originated from anthropology, particularly development anthropology. Therefore, the anthropological methodology has influenced and modified the development studies in course of its changes. The anthropological participant observation method has gradually emerged at participatory and action-oriented development studies. Participatory action research and rapid rural appraisal and goal-oriented project planning have been commonly used in development studies. Now, developing planning is generally based on culture-based. It is not possible to operate development outside culture. In development, culture is interpreted in relation to economic development. Political and social development get less importance. The Dutch development cooperation policy asserts culture as the basis of sustainable development. The argument of culture for sustainable development has been developed by Stephen Hagen and following him by Hetne. According to their view, and development should consider the ethnos for whom development is intended. It is what is known as ethno-development approach. It is the approach that is concerned with the development of indigenous culture. The Dutch development policy recognized communities as barriers of culture, not the nations as a whole. It maintained cultural diversities and cultural differences among communities of a nation. Reflections and Action 14.1. Why should cultural considerations be made part of planning? Discuss with suitable illustrations. 14.3. Emergence of alternative approaches. In the course of development of developmental theories, the mainstream development theories such as growth-oriented theories and others have been severely criticized. Gradually, alternative development theories have emerged to avoid the weakness of the earlier theories. The alternative approaches and their methodologies have emerged as the development paradigm, indicating a theoretical break from the mainstream development approaches. Some of the alternative theories are concerned with local development. Dependency theory, one of the alternative of the mainstream development theories, is concerned with structural macroeconomic changes in non-Western societies in the line of Western societies. There is another alternative development approach that emphasizes the capacity of people to bring about change in the development. This development approach depends on different means, participatory actions and people-centered development. It does not depend on the other societies or countries for its own development. A alternative development. In 1970 onwards, alternative development approach have emerged as people-centered development. This development is geared to the satisfaction on needs of the people for whom development is directed. The alternative development is also known as endogenous development. The approach has its own distinct methods associated with it. Usually, participatory method is also used for such approach. The participatory method initiate development process within the community and take into consideration the basic need of the people for their development. The alternative development are different from the earlier development approaches in respect of their methodology. A participatory, endogenous, self-sufficient and objective-oriented. Therefore, development must be undertaken from within the people and geared to their basic needs. Hetne believes that these are mainstream approaches. He puts least emphasis on the idea of demodernization and anti-development theories. In course of the development of developmental theories, the alternative development approach have been institutionalized as part of mainstream development. The alternative development is accepted and is progressive but not radical. It does not emphasize any clear ideology, and this could be absorbed by the mainstream development ideology. Hetne presents another development which is combination of basic needs, self-reliance, sustainable and endogenous development, but this could not be developed as a paradigm or alternative model. Today, There is not much differences between the approaches of alternative development and mainstream development. The components of alternative development approach like participation and sustainability have been adopted by mainstream development. There is no difference in principle. Gradually, this approach has become popular as mainstream alternative development. Endogenous development approach B. The idea of endogenous development was emerged from the approach of the alternative development. It is more specific to one's own culture in respect of its own development. The term, as it suggests, indicates the development from within the culture. It takes impetus from its own foundation of culture and gears the process of development. The notion of the endogenous takes into consideration social, cultural, and symbolic aspects of a society. When we call endogenous development, we think it is opposite to the idea of mainstream development, which emphasizes development through the process of change. That means through the process of modernization. That is, development of a society following the cultural characteristic of Western societies. It is the process which can be called as Westernization. But endogenous development means shaking off all the traditional and existing custom, values, and beliefs of the society, which intended to develop in its self-confidence. When goals and values are generated from within the culture, it also generates self-confidence. Here it is believed that modernity is generated from within our own culture. Therefore, modernization is not a thing to be borrowed from the West. There is no need to believe in modernization of tradition. Any society can develop of its own. It can develop itself without the help of others' path of development. Rahman mentions development is endogenous. There is no front runners to be followed. If a society tries to modernize itself by following models of any Western country, it will lead to the destruction of its own culture by inviting Western culture's elements in its own culture, which may not be adjustable to the existing situation. There will be destructions of its own social values, moral, and beliefs. Tradition always resists any change towards modernization in the form of Western model. Therefore, there may be a conflict between tradition and modernity, leading to unstable traditional culture situations in a society. But modernization from within means innovation of new elements from within the society and an adaptation to these new elements. Tradition is also considered a source of innovation, change, development, and modernization. It is seen that the endogenous idea of development is the foundation of alternative development approach, but there are some problems to discern what is endogenous and what is exogenous element in a culture. There may not always any distinct boundary between endogenous and exogenous elements in a culture and development thinking. There is also a problem with regards to the unit of development in the endogenous concept. In the conventional idea, society is used as a unit of development or a state or a nation. In criticizing the approaches of mainstream development, the ethno-development approach has highlighted that the development statistics usually shows country statistics or at the national level. Besides country statistics, other developmental statistics are available at the regional level concerning Latin America, Africa, Asia, and the Caribbean, etc. In development studies, the regions have become a familiar unit of development similar to the nation. The other scale of development action is the world, local, national, and macro-regional under UN system. These border units of development may not have any systematic in-depth approach at the micro level, such as the community or ethnic group of a nation or a region, etc. The need-based approach of the ethnic group of community requires micro and in-depth analysis of the country, community, on ideas of perception of development. In other words, this is what is called understanding of indigenous knowledge. The idea of indigenous knowledge has emerged to recognize the local knowledge. Agarwal has pointed out that the ignoring people's knowledge about their own development is almost to ensure failure in development efforts. There has been a clear shift of the orient of development approach, which has been largely influenced by ethno-methodology in oppositions to the enlightenment or positivistic approach in the areas of development. Norman Long has advocated actor-oriented approach in criticizing structuralist approaches in development and prefers to adopt anthropological approach. Reflections and Action 14.2 discuss the various alternative approaches to development and describes the reason behind the emergence of ethno-development as a distinct approach to development. 14.4 Methodology and Ethno-development. The concept and methodological approaches of ethno-development incorporate conventional anthropological methods such as participate observation. From this concept, there emerges the methodology of the alternative development, which is based on the participation by the people. This is what has come to be known as participatory method. The idea is that the development must be participatory and must involve local persons in decision-making process that affect their life with the development. The people of a community for whom development programs are adopted must take part in the formulation of development program. Those which do not involve the community or local people often fail. Participatory action of research, rapid rural appraisal, critical pedagogy, and empowerment are the various elements of alternative development program. What is special to these methods? These methods are applied to the local community context. It is argued that since development should come from within the society, not from outside, it must be participatory and community based. The initiative for development must be identified by the local people who will involve themselves in designing and implementation of the development project using principles and techniques suited to the local conditions. Cohen-Uphoff have interpreted participation as generally denoting the involvement of a significant number of persons in situations or actions which enhance their well-being. Example, their income, security, or self-esteem. Paul has defined participation in the context of development as a community participation that refers to an active process whereby beneficiaries influence the duration and execution of development projects rather than merely receiving a share of project benefits. Sandhanam defines participation as commitment on the part of the individual towards all forms of action by which the individual can take part or play part in the operation without being conscious of any socio-economic barriers to achieve certain common goals in a group situation. This commitment is possible only when he is apprised with the situation so as to enable him or her to form an attitude based on his or her own perceptions. Lilly from the study in Africa has explained that the local participation may mean involvement of people in planning and assessment of local needs. They may also be informed of the plans designed for their society if they are expected to give consent and to cooperate with the program implementation. Participation thus can bring self-reliance to accelerate self-development. Reflections and action 14.3. There may be several problems in your own community related to water, electricity, repairing of road, or even livelihood security. Based on your own experience as a community member, explain how the cultural resources of your community could be integrated for the solution to any of these problems. 14.5 Conclusion. This unit begins with a small discussion on the various theories of development. The issues of sustainable development and cultural consideration in the development are important dimensions of development discourse in contemporary world. Development is not longer defined solely in terms of economic growth. The cultural dimensions of society have emerged to play a significant role in contemporary development orientation. In this context, the emergence of various alternative approaches to development, that is endogenous development and ethno-development approaches, are elaborated. 14.6 Further reading. A. Agarwal, Indigenous and Scientific Knowledge. Some critical comments. Indigenous Knowledge and Development Monitor. T.K. Woman, Changing Paradigm of Development. The Evolving Participatory Society, Journal of Social and Economic Development. S. Paul, Community Participation in Development Projects, the World Bank Experience. The World Bank Reading in Community Participation, the World Bank, Washington, D.C. J.N. Peters, Development Theory, Vistar Publication, New Delhi. So this is the end of the chapter 14.